Pretoria, and it is, of course, a magnificent building where we're seeing the 37th SADC Summit taking place. And that theme we've been talking about all morning and trying to, I suppose, get to the bottom of is partnering with the private sector in developing industry and regional value chains. It's a thread that seemed to have appeared from 2014, 2015, 2016, and here we are and in South Africa, where we're about to take over as the country chair of SADC, which is a 15-member bloc of countries that are together. But something that was quite interesting that I was talking to our minister about is that this is just 15 countries of a major continent. And I mean, the continent of Africa, we're talking about 1 billion people. They can't be isolated, and SADC can't work alone. What are the relations with the rest of the region?
Well, almost 2 years ago, if not more, Leon, we came together with their excellencies from different regions. That was SADC, EAC, East Africa Community, and COMESA, to form the tripartite free trade agreement. So regional blocks like ours, SADC, forms the cornerstone of this continental free trade area, the CFTA, that will complete the full participation and unleash the potential of our most youthful population in the world, the population of people of Africa, who make more than 60%. We can only unleash this, and they really don't have to die crossing rivers and being smuggled by funny people across the seas, because we are minerally endowed. We just need requisite skilling so that at the end we work together to realize that maybe as we're sitting here, we sometimes do not say that we are just but not than 1 million, but we have a country like India, which is 13 times smaller than the continent of Africa. So we can achieve all these things and make sure that the fourth industrial revolution doesn't zoom past us. The digitization and ICT, which brings about the fourth industrial revolution, will find us ready with youthful people with the requisite skills, not just educated, but with requisite skills to take the opportunities that their motherland provide. That we don't train job seekers, but those who also want to provide opportunities for themselves and their peers in their own motherland. I know they're not good swimmers, so they don't need to swim somewhere. They just have to make it good here at home. We are less than 1 billion. We are 13 times bigger than India, and the 15 member countries that are sitting in this room form part of that very, very big story of Agenda Africa 2063, the Africa we want and its aspirations.
All right, we've been joined by another one of the delegates that have gathered here, one of the ministers, from Zimbabwe. Thank you so very much for joining us. Please, if you will, introduce yourself to us, and then we'll continue our discussion.
Thank you very much. I'm Dr. Michael Bima, Minister of Industry and Commerce in Zimbabwe.
Excellent. Lovely to have you. Thank you very, very much. Obviously, being a part of SADC as Zimbabwe, you play a very big role. In fact, you did hold the presidency for a year as well, and that was in 2014. If we look at the developments from Zimbabwe's perspective, because we, as South Africans and the rest of the continent, look in on Zimbabwe and we look at some issues that the country is going through, and many people not happy. What is being done to move the country forward?
Obviously, one has to appreciate that Zimbabwe went through a difficult period, but which was mainly to do with policies that the government had taken prior to that period, which was more to do with the land question. Yeah. And as a result of that, there were sanctions imposed upon Zimbabwe as a result of having taken that policy of getting back the land to its owners. Now, because of that, industry suffered as well, because as a result of the sanctions, financial institutions were not able to have lines of credit for own lending to companies. As a result, companies were not able to recapitalize, to re-equip, or to retool, affecting their competitiveness. And that saw a period of deindustrialization, companies closing, companies not able to produce what they used to do, capacity utilization getting to the levels of probably 30%, which again has an effect on your costs, and that affects your entire performance as a sector. But obviously, the government has now addressed some of these issues. We are re-engaging so that the world can know exactly where Zimbabwe is coming from and appreciate where we are. And in so doing, we are seeing a lot of investors coming back to Zimbabwe. Even those who used to have companies in Zimbabwe and who had left are now coming back and say, look, we want to come back home. And that, again, is very encouraging. But more importantly, the government has been looking at policies that address the issue of investment, the issue of industrialization, in keeping with SADC, in keeping with COMESA, in keeping with what we are trying to achieve in terms of establishing the tripartite free trade area, as well as the Agenda 2063 of the African Union. So the whole theme of industrialization runs through right from policies that we have at a national level. Yeah. When you look at ZIMASET, which is our own economic blueprint, it focuses on value addition and beneficiation, and that feeds into the SADC industrialization and roadmap, and also feeds into the other programs at other regional levels as well as the continental level. Okay. So there have been deliberate policies to achieve that. Right. And I think those are the policies that we will continue to make sure that we support local industry. We support those who want to invest in the country, and that we continue to do so that we achieve the economic growth. And they said earlier on, it was said that you cannot only achieve economic growth when you have the private sector participating, not only participating, but taking the lead.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about, there's quite an interesting aspect of this meeting that is also something that'll be spoken about, and perhaps I can ask our guests coming up and you as well. There's this slogan that is going to be discussed, the SADC we want. Yes. Now, obviously, there's a vision of what SADC must look like and what SADC wants. Now, this brings me to my question, and particularly for Zimbabwe, that there's been threats of some protest action that could be taking place this weekend, and a lot of Zimbabweans not happy with the democracy that exists within Zimbabwe, and they feel that it is an autocratic government that is not giving them what they want. They have undemocratic tendencies, and this is for a lot of countries within the SADC region. Now, what do you say to the critics that are very concerned about the running and the lack thereof of democracy and the amount of people that have left Zimbabwe? I know you say they're coming back, but people are leaving in their droves. Now, what do you say to attract them back?
I will address the last aspect of what you said. Only a few weeks ago, the Vice President of our country, together with several ministers, me included, were in Johannesburg to address Zimbabweans in the diaspora. The meeting was oversubscribed. There were people who couldn't even get chairs to attend the meeting. And what did they want? They said, yes, we are working in South Africa, which is a SADC country, no problem with that, but we want to come back home and invest. And once you invest, obviously you have to go back and look at your investments. And this was the first meeting that we have ever had that was oversubscribed. Now, so we had people, Zimbabweans, who are prepared to come back home and invest, right? Now, on the sidelines of that meeting, we also had a group of what we call in Zimbabwe, roadies, right? Those who were in the then Rhodesia, who came to the same meeting and say, can you address us separately? It said, why? He said, look, we have been in Zimbabwe, in Rhodesia before. We had companies, we left because we didn't want the system. But we are now coming back to you and say, how can we come back? And we said, look, no one chased you away. You are free to come back. And now this is interesting. On one hand, you had our own people in the diaspora, black Zimbabweans wanting to come back home and invest, but at the same time, you also have the former Rhodesians, right? Who are also saying, we want to come back home. So the issue of how people perceive democracy is really a question of perception. And it's just how you see things. And as far as I'm concerned, we are not actually having a problem of investors who come and say, look, we are not investing because of the nature of your government. You see, governments all over have to come up with a model that suits them. There is no prescription to say, look, this is the right type of democracy. There are some countries where you don't talk about democracy in terms of elections, etc., and who are doing well because they've come up with a model that suits them. What is important for Africa is for us to identify those models that suits our own countries. And together, I'm sure we can find that we will achieve tremendous economic growth.
All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very
much for talking to us here on the program. The view of Zimbabwe's representative here. Of course, President Robert Mugabe expected in the country this weekend. Yes. Indeed. All right, so we'll wait on that and also have the Zimbabwean president here talking further about the theme and the relations going forward. Let's take a break. When we return, Zania will be talking to us as well. Stay tuned.